Hello everyone and welcome to the Art of Teaching Art. Today I am going to show you how to draw an iris as part of an eye. Now we're starting with this because I feel like it's the most important part of the eye. It's the bit that has the highlight, the detail, gives a little bit of character to your drawing or any of your portraiture. And I think that a lot of people don't focus enough on the detail of this, and I think it is really important. So I've got two examples here. This one here, I focused on getting in the dark areas first, and then I would work on the other areas. I focused on blending and adding details to some of these areas. I am drawing bigger because it helps me to add more detail to my work. And then you can develop your work further by adding, this is coffee in the background, and this is actually a picture of my eye, this one. And here you can see the reflection of the classroom in which I took the picture. So actually the iris can tell a really good story with the shadows and highlights and things that you see within it. So it's up to you how you choose to have your image. I've got some printed images here, and I've also got an image on an iPad. It's up to you which works best for you. You could of course have an image on a phone. What I've done, because I'm going to be drawing in pencil, is I've changed the image on the iPad to black and white, and I've got it printed out in black and white as well. So with this drawing, what we're looking to do is add a lot of detail, add the range of tones that we would like to see, and just really focus on doing a really good observational sketch of the eye. So we're looking carefully at the image we're drawing from and drawing the details that we see. So we're going to start off by drawing the shape. Now what I like to do with an eye is to start with the centre of the picture. So often the pupil, then adding in any highlights, and then drawing the iris. If I was then going on to draw the rest of the eye, I would then add the rest of the eye in, using the iris and pupil to give me my proportions. So I'm just going to be using these pencils, so the HB pencil to sketch out, and then a 2B and 4B pencil to add a range of tones. I might later on add a little bit of detail with a mechanical pencil. So starting off with the pupil, so I'm going to draw the circle of the pupil first of all. So I'm going to use sketched lines with my pencil to get the initial shape. And then I'll go on to drawing this highlight. Now the highlight goes across the whole of the pupil. That does vary from picture to picture. Obviously here it's slightly off centre, here it's slightly different as well. But it's just up to you to look at your picture carefully. So I'll have the line coming across the top here, and then two straight lines, kind of rectangular but circular, coming across for the highlight. I'm just going to reduce the size of that slightly, and then I can rub out the bit of the pupil that I drew in beforehand. So then I can work to add in the rest of the iris, so thinking about the width of this. So if we look at the pupil size is actually the same distance as it is from the pupil to the iris. So the distance from the top of the pupil where the highlight is to the bottom of the pupil is the same distance to the bottom of the pupil to the bottom of the iris. And that measurement is pretty much standard all the way around. It is slightly smaller on this side. So I can use proportion within my own drawing. I can measure the size of my own pupil and then use that to judge where the edge of the iris will be. I do this with my fingers, but you could do it with a ruler or just by eye if you wanted. So measuring that means that the edge of my iris needs to come about there. The same, I'll check the side, so it's exactly the same on the side. So just doing small marks to mark it. And it is slightly smaller on the other side, so I'm just going to bring it around here. I can then use sketch lines with my pencil to bring round the circular shape. You might see the edge of the iris coming up into the eye, or you might not, depending on what picture you're working from. In this one you can see it slightly, so I'm going to curve that slightly more, and then I'm going to draw in the top of the eye here. So we're thinking about how far the top of the eyelid, the lash line is from the highlight. So it's probably about half a highlight. So my half of a highlight is about that. So bring that up to there, and this is a swooping line coming across here. So I've got my initial sketch there. I will then start to add some of the detail that I can see in this picture. So when I look at the picture here, I can see there's a little rectangle coming up into the highlight. Obviously you've got the eyelashes coming into the highlight. I'm going to save that for last. You've got a darker edge around here, and then you've got lines coming into the iris as well. So I'm going to start with that little rectangle. This is mostly dark up here. So I'm going to mark the lines that I can see. So I can see a line coming across here with a triangle above it, which is slightly lighter. This is where your attention to detail really does come in. So I'm just looking in, picking out the most prominent features, areas that I will need to shade and add detail to, and drawing them in. You can only practice this by actually looking really carefully at the image that you're drawing from. That's what's most important with this. So I'm just going to spend some time drawing in the details that I can see in the picture. Depending on which picture you're drawing from is how much detail you might have in your picture. You could also choose, if you wanted to not include some of the detail. So sometimes there is a little bit too much detail, but your image is going to look more realistic if you choose to add more detail. But obviously this is a skill that needs to be kind of developed over time. It's not something that's just going to come to you kind of overnight. So I've added all the detail that I want to for now. It's very easy to get lost in the detail with this. What you might want to do is section off your image and maybe do like a quarter of it and then do the next section and things like that. Please remember that when someone's looking at your drawing of the iris, they're not going to be looking at the same picture. So the detail that you see, that you add, is the detail that the person will see when they look at your drawing. So we're now going to go on to the shading part. I'm going to start with the darkest areas first and then work to the lighter areas. I will use a plain piece of paper to cover part of the paper so I don't rub graphite everywhere. And I am going to start with the 4B pencil first of all. So I'm thinking about shading all in one direction, nice and smoothly, starting off quite softly and then building up layers to create my darker areas. So I'm going to start with the pupil, this area here. It's the kind of largest, darkest area, so it's best to start with that. And I'm just going to work smoothly over the surface of the pupil. And then I will go over that again to build up the tone. After I've done a couple of layers with the 4B pencil, I'll go over with the 2B pencil to just blend in any left bits of paper. So I've added the darkest areas in, and now I'm going to start to work through the rest of the eye. The important thing with this is to leave some areas lighter so you get that range of texture that I can see in my picture here. I'm going to start with the darker edges, and that will start to really pull the iris together, and then go through and add the rest of these details in. now I'm on to adding the details. I've got a nice round edge and it blends nice and neatly too. And I'm going to start in this section here and work down. I'm going to use the HB pencil first of all to block in some areas and then work on top adding dark and light areas as well. Okay, so I've pretty much got the detail just in the HB pencil, but what I'm wanting to do now is just create a greater contrast. So I'm going to go in with a sharp 4B pencil and then use the tiny rubber on the end of the mechanical pencil and the end of the mechanical pencil to add some final details. So I'm looking back at some of these details here, using the little rubber to rub out some of the little lines and then adding some of the darker details in. So I'm just going to go through and do that now. Okay, so there's my iris. So I've got one last detail to add, which is the eyelashes in the highlight. Now, this is the trickiest part because what you don't really want to do is rub out, because you want that beautiful clean white. It's the lightest area on the picture. You want that on your drawing as well. So we need to have a look and see how these are spaced. So all these center bits come down towards this rectangle that I've got here, and then you've got one loop coming this way and then a loop coming this way. So I'm going to use the mechanical pencil first of all to just sketch out, just because it's a very fine point. And I'm going to loop this round, and then this one comes in from this side and loops up and round and has a little one within it. And then this one, there's a bit here and then a bit that comes here, and then you've got another loop finally here. So that's the basics. So what I want to do is sharpen my pencil so I've got a really, really fine point. Now this sharpener is from Tesco and it grinds the pencil instead, so it gets a really fine point. Yeah, see there, we've got a really beautiful fine point. The alternative is to use a mechanical pencil if you wanted to as well, but this is a lot darker, so it's easier. So just adding these details, so I'm looking carefully at the picture, adding in the details that I see. So here is my iris. As just a finishing touch, I will just go over the darker areas to just refine them, just get rid of any little white speckles of the paper that are showing through, although sometimes it is quite nice to see the texture of the paper coming through. And there is my iris. Thank you so much for watching and have a really great day.